July 9th, 2021 of our regular meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments or revisions? All right, if we're good, we'll entertain a motion regarding the minutes from our last meeting then.
I'll move.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. All right, everyone. All those in favor of adopting the minutes from our last meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The minutes have been accepted. All right, on to item number 3 this evening, which are the bills. John or Eric?
Sure. Mr. President, we do not have any bills to present this month because of the short time frame between meetings. We'll have the bills at the next regular meeting in September.
Very nice. Well, that was easy. There's nothing to adopt then, I'm assuming, so we're able to move on to the next item, which will be our business for tonight. First of all, we have item A, which is a resolution to authorize the exclusive rights for potential land sale of former UBC site to NJS Development, the Stencil Group. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. President. As HEDRA will remember, part of the strategic action plan that you all adopted recently included the redevelopment of the UBC site, or at least a portion thereof. Staff has been actively marketing that site leading up to the adoption of that strategic plan. Excuse me. And an interested party in that property is Stencil Group that is here with us this evening. They have visited the site on a few occasions. We've talked through the various parameters of the site, and they are very interested. They have met with a handful of departments with the city to kind of talk through the various development proposals for the site. They've provided a rough site plan of what they would like to complete and sent in a rendering of a recently completed project that they completed in Northfield. They anticipate if this project moves forward, they would try and do a very similar project here in Hastings, again on the UBC site. What we're seeking this evening is for HEDRA to authorize staff to basically sign off on an exclusive rights negotiation with the Stencil Group for development of the site for a high multifamily development project. With that, I'll stand for questions, and Nate Stencil with Stencil Group is in the audience.
All right, maybe we'll start with questions for Eric first. Yes, go ahead, Scott.
These two sites are separated by, what is it, 4th Street, 5th Street? Are we talking about a concept that covers both of them and changes traffic flow in any way? Or how are you conceptualizing use of the split ground?
Good question. Yeah, I can take that one for you. President Piney, Commissioner Sinclair. The developer is proposing to purchase the vacant lot and the northernmost building. So it would be just the north 2 properties, essentially, of UBC. The metal building, the southern building, the more cement building, that would stay. That would not be part of their proposed purchase. So it would not cross over the public right-of-way. There is an alley, public dedicated right-of-way between the, we'll just call it the north and the south parcel. That would need to be vacated, but it would not impact any existing public roadways.
Okay.
So essentially, when you're looking at that site, and I apologize, we don't have the maps running today. When you're on the riverfront trail there at 3rd Street, when you have that emergency crossing, the CP rail, it's just to the south of that. So there's a big gravel parking lot that HEDRA owns. That would be part of it, and then going into that first building of the UBC site.
So there's houses to the west of that then, so they would butt right up to those houses? I don't think I'm visualizing this without the map here, but.
When you look directly to the west there is one house that I believe Stencil Group is looking at a potential purchase and inclusion to the site. And then there would be another house that's on the corner there.
Okay, big building.
So this is kind of the parking lot that was put in through, I don't know, that was, anyway, in front of the railroad.
I'm gonna take I want a picture so I can.
Yeah.
let somebody else see this while I look at it.
When we had first, am I okay to talk? You guys?
Cool.
you guys
Oh,
want
yes,
to-
feel free.
Okay, so when we had first started working, when Eric and John reached out, and we started working on the site, or looked at potential sites in downtown, this one we identified as something that was very interesting to us. And at that point, it was really, the city owns this building here, there's a lot here, and then kind of a lot here. And then since we had a meeting, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, they had given us the name of the person that owns this house right here, of which we reached out to, and they've been great to work with and very fair on the price, so we've since contracted that home. So the site's gotten a little bigger, so that's why this red line now goes over here. What we, initial proposal before we gained the extra land, had an 87 unit building. The one we just completed in Northfield is 79 units. It's right downtown at 5th and Washington. Very similar situation. We worked with the EDA board over there, and they owned a site or had a site under contract, and then we bought 2 additional sites that allowed for the building. So it's 79 units. It's in their downtown zone. It's Class A apartment. It's actually there now. If you're in Northfield, you'll see it, but that's the rendering initially of what it is, and that's exactly what it looks like today. So 79 units, a mix of studios, 1 beds, 2 beds. The main level has a very nice welcoming lobby and seating area, and then also a really first-class fitness level center on the first level. So that's a lot of that commercial glass that you see to kind of give it more of a retail type feel, even though it's not in their main retail corridor. Kind of similar to what we would do here. So the main entrance to the building would be facing to the north, kind of along the trail, I guess, or kind of up in this area facing this way. And so it's like an L, and then it would come down that way. So underground parking would enter from the 4th Street side, and then we'd have some surface parking over here off of East 3rd is the tentative concept. The main front of the building here would be to the north on East 3rd, and then so that would be kind of, people coming and going and getting to the downtown and use the, downtown being the biggest amenity of it. So, oh, you guys have it now too? Okay, so yeah, that's so very similar to what we do. That we're real happy with the way that project came out. So we're talking about a high quality first class building, a lot of brick, metal panel. It'll have a sky lounge that's on the northeast corner, top floor. Did I do that right? Yeah, northeast corner on the top floor, so that they can take advantages of the lake to the east, and then look down to the bridge and the river to the north. Yeah, so I guess that's real high level, but we're gonna kind of follow what we did in Northfield. It's very successful. It's been open for 60 days now. Had a greatly. I mean, it was full before we opened, which doesn't happen very often. But there was great demand there. I think there's great demand here for this type of living with the a vibrant downtown area and a great location. So that's pretty early on in the phases, or in the details of putting it together. But we're very confident we can get this deal put together, and working with staff has been amazing, very helpful. Our goal for this, if everything goes well with you guys, we're going to keep pushing forward, but at a higher level starting tomorrow with civil and architecture, or as soon as we have approval, with the goal of getting everything in place by the end of the year, and then depending on how quick we can get the building vacated, our goal would be to start in the first quarter of 22 and then open in the spring of 23.
All right, very good. Does anyone have any additional questions?
Nate, can I ask you to step to the podium over there,
Oh,
just
yeah.
to make sure that we get things recorded?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries, thanks.
I get going. You could have just
No
told me to
worries.
move sooner.
So I know this is real preliminary at this stage, but it says high density. So what are you looking at for number of units? Do you have any idea yet, a concept?
Right now, the building that we have designed, that's very, a lot change, it's basically a schematic design,
Mhm.
but it's pretty high level design. Density is always our friend in these downtown zones. So right now it's 87 units, but I think that if things go well, it could be up to 90 units, but no more than 90. So like between 85 and 90, depending on a few details. Like when we had the meeting a week and a half ago, we kind of learned about some different, a few obstacles to overcome. The biggest one is probably parking. It's a very common thing that we see in communities is that the parking requirements are a little onerous and a little outdated. When buildings, like 15 years ago, when we built a building, like 60% of the units could be 2 beds. Today, the trend is about 20% of the units in most structures are 2 beds. So that leaves most of them being studios and 1 beds. Where we see the greatest demand, those are 1-car type units, and then the 2, if you figure 2 for your 2 beds, lead to a much lower parking ratio than what some cities currently require, especially more in like an urban core. So for instance, Northfield, you have 79 units, we have 56 underground parking spaces. Everything else, we don't even have any additional surface spaces. So it's up to the resident to either use parking lots that are nearby or street parking or whatever it may be. And some people don't have cars, but we definitely don't see a lot of people have more than 2 cars. The 2 beds, even there, I don't know what to say to you, but I don't even know if many of the 2-bed type units have 2 cars. So that was probably one of the challenges we'll have kind of moving forward here is that due to land constraints in the downtown zone, I don't think we're gonna be able to get up to I think it's 2 cars per unit, I believe is what it is written as, so there will be a variance request, to kind of overcome that, but, so 85 to 90 units, and, hopefully we can get to kind of a 1-to-1 or a 1.2 parking ratio is probably about the best we can do in the downtown zone, so.
Thank you. And then I have one further question. How many stories would you anticipate that it would be?
This will be a 4-story.
A 4-story. Okay, just
And
really
again,
close
it
to
might-
this.
Pretty early on, we got some soil, staff had a lot of really good information when we met, one of them being soil borings. It's a rocky area, so typically we'd prefer to be underground with the first level or with the parking, and then main level being main level living. Here, I think we'll end up kind of trying to go deep enough where about half of the parking structure is underground, and then maybe half above. Do the best we can there, and then 4 stories above that in the air. So it'd be, out of the ground, probably less than 50 feet from grade to top. So it's, and the other part that's nice about that is too, it kind of lifts those main level units out of the ground a little bit, because in downtown, you might not love having a patio door right at the main level. So pretty early on again, but just some stuff we're learning over the last couple weeks about the project.
Very good. Are there any additional questions? Yes, Scott?
For staff, John, Eric, what's been our history of parking variance, just previous projects that have requested? Has the city looked at updating that? Just give us a little crystal ball question here. Where would that be headed in terms of, again, not looking for decisions, obviously, there's nothing to decide on, but I'm just curious, what precedent would there be for that to be either a sticking point or an easy button for them?
Sure, Commissioner. Within the downtown area, we have, our zoning district allows for reduced parking based upon a couple of things. One, It could be as low as a space and a half per unit, which is lower than our 2-unit average, our 2-unit requirement elsewhere within the city. There's also a part of that ordinance that allows for a proof of parking study to be conducted. And if it's done by a professional and it follows some of the guidance of parking authorities, the International Transportation Engineers, or something similar, then we can take that study in lieu of the parking requirement. So it might not necessarily require a variance, but some additional study.
All right, I have a question. Just in regard to the different unit types, I can assume that translates to different rental rates as well? So there'll be a variety of income levels that would be able to afford the building?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. All right, any other additional? Yeah, go ahead. There's no limit.
The building that would not be included, general discussion, what does that become relative to HEDRA? Is that become like an asset that's unmarketable, that we continue to market, that we try to work with Stencil Group to incorporate, to not end up with an odd parcel? Any thoughts there, John, Eric? Just more crystal ball questions.
Commissioner, I take a look at that property. It is a little bit smaller than the site that they're gonna have for the full building. But when you take a look at the size of that block, that quarter block, it's comparable in the size to what Seaward is planning for his 32-unit building. So there may still be some value for even something that would be of a higher density there. It could also be something that may be a townhome row house type site. I think when we took a look at our downtown plan 20 years ago, that's kind of what we had contemplated down there, not thinking that there would be a density demand higher. Now, markets have obviously changed since that time when we're seeing that, but I think there's a couple of different options there in the future. I don't think it's a situation in which we're stuck with a property that would be unmarketable or undevelopable in the future.
Okay, perfect.
And I can kind of add a little bit of my thoughts on that too, and I was just sharing with the mayor, but our business model is really we develop projects for ourselves, we build our own projects, and we manage our own projects. So every community we come into, such as Northfield, Hastings, a bunch of small ones throughout South Dakota, we do projects in Austin, Minnesota, Rochester, and then quite a few in the metro area. But our goal in a community like this is to really come in and do one project and then turn around and hopefully keep adding to that at different levels. So, you know, maybe we would look at a phase 2 on a site like that, or maybe try to acquire some of the homes around it to make it bigger. You know, and another thought is, you know, hopefully, you know, we can identify another need within the market and, you know, maybe on the outskirts of town or a different site that would be a different price point. You know, our goal is really to get multiple buildings in a market, and our management company, we always hire local staff, manage the building, and then hopefully just build off the base. You know, it's a lot easier to continue developing in communities you're familiar with and where you have a base than to kind of always go and look for the next one. So you know, hope if all goes well and we keep moving forward, you know, we'd love the opportunity to hopefully you know, potentially look at that site or other sites in the future.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Eric. Oh, Lori.
Thank you. My question has to do with the demolition of the current building. So how does that fit into the timeline that we have in terms of this initial act, this initial resolution of authorizing exclusive rights? And then what would be the timing of demolishing that building? Because I saw that was in the budget later. So can you just speak to that timeline a little bit?
Sure, Commissioner. With the timeline that we're going on now, there would be, we'd vacate the building, find another place for the stuff that we have within there. The cost of that, we have it in the budget for next year. If that happens earlier, we could do a transfer of funds from our fund balance to pay for that. We're also going to be likely seeking a grant application to defray some of the costs of that anyway. So that should not be a stumbling point. I think probably the biggest stumbling point from the demolition or removal of that building is just going to be the timing standpoint from some of the stuff that we as a city have within there, and making sure that we can find other places. We've already done some initial investigations into that. We've put the other departments on notice that, hey, we're cleaning out the garage, folks. We need to find another place.
Thank you, and just one follow-up question. You mentioned that you were working with Northfield EDA as well. Will you be working with Dakota County CDA or seeking additional grant funding to make the project go forward?
Yeah, so it's not we're not really doing any sort of affordable type housing or anything here. This is more of a market rate development. And that's really what the city of Northfield was looking for in their downtown zone too. We will be moving forward with a TIF request in order to proceed with the project. There is a gap that we would need that to keep the project moving forward. So that would be the only assistance we would be asking for or applying for the project.
Thank you.
Yes, Bruce.
Is there any environmental cleanup stuff that we have to do to that property, or?
Yeah, Commissioner, we were able to go through a phase 1 environmental, which we should be getting back shortly. There's a few items that may need to be addressed relating to soil vapor, and so that is something that will need to be taken care of. If that is the case, there are a number of environmental grant sources that we've been successful in the past, and we would dip into those in the future.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Scott, do you have any questions?
I do have one more question.
There we go, there we go.
You were successful in acquiring the one property, at least a contract for that. Did you approach any of the other homeowners, the adjacent homeowners? Do you have any interest in that? Is there a compelling reason to look at those? I think one of them is a HUD home, if I remember right, seeing it.
Yeah,
signs
I
come and
haven't
go.
looked into it anymore. It's something that we may pursue as we go further, but right now, I think that, the sweet spot for us is kind of that 90, you're right around 90 units, to get started in the community.
Okay.
Which we don't really need any additional, land to do that, and of course, when you start acquiring, if we tie up another $300,000-400,000 in land costs, then it, starts affecting the economics of the project. So.
Understood, thanks.
Thank you. Eric, yes.
Thank you, President Piney. I did want to make one note to HEDRA. While there is likely a TIF application that will come forward as part of this project, the developer has proposed to pay market rate for the land price of the three properties they would be acquiring. So just wanted to make that clear to HEDRA that it would be a market rate land transaction. And then one interesting item also when staff toured the Northfield project was the residents that the project attracted. Nate, if you could kind of speak to that a bit.
One of the things in Northfield that just blew my mind is who our customer base ended up being, because we really don't see it anywhere else. It doesn't matter what community we're in, but it predominantly ended up being baby boomers. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like literally, 75+% of this building are people that live, like, they're probably in their 50+, and an awful lot of them they have a tie to Northfield, but they weren't living in Northfield. They literally are moving to Northfield to live in this building and to live in Northfield. So it attracted a lot of people. I'm talking people, I don't know if it was COVID or what, but a lot of people obviously had their eye on moving to that community, and COVID was maybe the springboard to get them there. But I mean, I'm talking like California, up and down the eastern eastern coast, like people moving into Northfield, and they love it. So it's we just don't see that at our other buildings. A lot of the times it's kind of younger people that maybe just got married or singles. Some baby boomers, but not a ton. And this one was just, predominantly baby boomers, and predominantly people that weren't living in Northfield until this year. So it was really cool to see.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any additional questions or comments regarding this evening? Yes, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. First of all, thanks for choosing Hastings. Thanks for, what I'm really curious about is what, you mentioned a little bit about the communities that you're in. For knowledge for us, what is the draw to Hastings? Was it the location as a developer, or is it the amenities of the downtown or the space? Because Hastings still has other spaces that you could approach us for this, but this one's downtown by the railroad tracks. So.
Yeah, so, you know, it's a pretty active development cycle we're in right now, so it kind of just takes time to work around the different areas and different opportunities. The bank we work with most is Premier Bank, and we work with them all over the state. So we've come here for meetings, always really liked it. Frankly, never spent much time in this part of the town. So when we got in touch with Eric and John, it was a real eye-opener to see the similarities and the beauty of Hastings downtown, which really has gotten us excited about this. We are loosely involved with the new senior property going behind Premier Bank through another company we do a lot of work with called Real Estate Equities. So when we started that project with them and Premier, you know, it's probably over 2 years ago. So we kind of had Hastings on our radar, but just get distracted doing other things. And then we were in Northfield, and I think between our civil engineer that we deal with quite a bit and Nate Carlson over at Northfield, I somehow got to Eric and John, and they reached out, and it was, you know, it was the push we needed to come over here and make time to do a project.
Appreciate the story. It just helps us as decision makers.
Answer, sorry.
No, that's actually good, because that's the thing I'm looking for. I always looking to see what makes us, and it looks like connections help, so.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone, do we have any additional questions or comments this evening? All right, if not, I think we would be ready to entertain a motion regarding Resolution 2021-11.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve the resolution 2021-11.
All right, do we have a second? this evening?
Second.
Thank you. All right, everyone, we have a motion and a second. All those who are in favor of approving Resolution 2021-11, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, everyone, and welcome to Hastings, gentlemen.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. We're super excited and can't wait to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
night, everyone.
You too. All right, moving on to item B this evening under business, we have another resolution. We have an authorization for a signature for the First Amendment to a purchase agreement with River City Investments LLC. John or Eric?
Thank you, President Piney. Before you this evening is a request to approve a First Amendment to the purchase agreement with River City Investments for the apartment project downtown that they're looking to complete on 3rd Street East. The current development agreement stated a date to close on the property of August 1st. It also had a date for submittal of land use applications by August 1st. Staff's desire is to push the closing date beyond the date that they're supposed to apply for the actual land use entitlements, and to instead tie the actual closing date to occur within 30 days of receiving approvals for those land use entitlements. Essentially, we don't want to close on the property, turn it over prior to the project actually being approved of. So we've proposed that to HEDRA this evening. We've talked through this with the developer. He's comfortable with it as well. The developer has submitted a handful of the items to be submitted by August 1st, so that's progressing well. We met with their engineer this week, so we anticipate that submittal to occur by August 1st. But again, just looking to do this First Amendment to adjust the closing date to better align with staff's goals for timing.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions on this? Is this something we initiated then, as a city?
Mr. President, yes, it is.
All right, thank you. All right, do we have any additional questions or comments regarding this? All right, everyone, if not, we will look at adopting a motion for Resolution 2021-12.
Motion to approve Resolution 2021-12.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second this evening? Second. We have a second. All right, everyone in favor of approving Resolution 2021-12, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Item C here, to cancel the August 12th regular meeting.
Pretty much sums up the title right now, folks. We, the meeting tonight will suffice for that August meeting. We understand that there is a long gap of time between today and the next meeting at the beginning of September. If action requires us to hold a special meeting in the interim, we may call on you to do that, but we have no immediate plans at this point.
All right, thank you. Hopefully, someone will make a motion. Thank you, Mark. Do we have a second? We have a second. All right, everyone in favor of approving the motion to cancel the August 12th regular meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? It is canceled. All right. On to reports and information. Item A is the Hastings Housing Market Update. John or Eric?
Thank you, Mr. President. Included in your packet this evening is really a variety of information from staff based on some data analysis that we've been doing with assistance from our community development intern, Grady, which has been a big help from a mapping standpoint. So we've got all the home sales, single-family home sales from May 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2021 for Hastings, Rosemount, Cottage Grove, and Farmington. And then we've got each of the home sales then mapped based on that community's area median income. And then if that home was sold between 0 to 30% of that median income, 31 to 50, 51 to 80, 81 to 100, and then above the area median income, or what would be affordable to somebody making that area median income. Most of the information for you to look at, absorb. We're not looking for any necessary action this evening, but certainly taking any questions you may have from the data that's in front of you. We've also included for you a chart that shows essentially based on the City of Hastings 2019 AMI, which is the most recent one that's currently available, which is just over $71,000. What would be affordable to a family of four, down to a one-person household, up to an eight-person household, from a purchase price standpoint, and then based on what was essentially purchased within the last year, there was only, if memory serves, got a table here, 13 sold out of 231, give or take, that were above what was affordable to the area median income for the City of Hastings. So everything else fit in some category of affordable, either the 0 to 30, 31 to 50, 51 to 80, or 81 to 100%, with again just 13 being above what would be essentially affordable. So I think that shows really good existing, naturally occurring affordable housing within the community. And then if you look at the very last page of your packet, we put together an infographic that shows some summary information on the housing market, or at least the market that existed May to May 2020 to 2021. Average home sale was just over $300,000. Age of that home was built in 1977. It was a 3.5 bed, 2.5 bath home. Average days on market was 14, which was comparable to those adjacent communities I mentioned. Two were at 12 and the other at 11, so we were slightly longer, but still very competitive. And then about 2,100 square feet. Also on that infographic is a chart showing the total number of homes sold and kind of essentially the price point and how that compares. And I think one thing that is interesting for HEDRA to look at is the homes sold really from that 300,000 mark to that roughly 500,000 mark, and that's really kind of a gap in terms of the number of homes sold, and that could either be from either just affordability for residents that we have, or just a gap in the market, product that simply isn't there to be purchased. Certainly that product is available in our neighboring communities and is being purchased. So I think that's an interesting piece of kind of information that we were able to glean from this analysis. Other than that, a lot of information, but happy to answer any questions that HEDRA may have.
Thank you, Eric. This is actually, I think it makes it much more informative to see it kind of gauged against neighboring communities. I mean, this is really interesting. I like having that layer added onto it, so thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Yes.
So Eric, it shows that our existing housing stock is fitting in these categories. What are we looking for in the future? I mean, we've got the development coming in that is, you know, a couple developments that are over 400. Are we still seeing a significant need for, I mean, we've got our median income, you know, is 71,000. So, I mean, are we seeing any developers coming in expressing an interest in building, meeting that need for more affordable single-family housing?
Yep. Commissioner, I'll have John respond to, or Mr. Hinsman respond to kind of the single-family home developers that have expressed interest, because they've been mostly contacting him regarding that.
Okay.
But in terms of what we're looking at into the market, you know, that 71,000 AMI, you know, that's they can roughly afford, if we're assuming a 3.5% interest rate and no more than 30% of their monthly income used to on-home expenses, that's a $400,000 home.
Okay.
And so really at 400 is that top mark of the area AMI. Now, when we get above that, that's that step-up housing. I think what could be very interesting is if we're able to do another layer, and we could look at, say, okay, when all these homes that sold, when were they sold last before that? Did we see people that were in their homes for a few decades
For a long time.
move?
Right.
And if so, were they able to stay here? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that this does paint a picture that we have a lot of existing affordable housing. We don't have a lot of step-up housing. And so if that opportunity presents itself, it might benefit the community to entertain a project like that if the market is there. And sometimes trusting the developers that if they're wanting to do something, they've looked at the market that they might know better, or not know better, but they know what they're looking for. And if they see something and they want to invest the kind of money that they would need to invest in a project, then it might be worthwhile to look into.
Commissioner, from the single-family market standpoint, from the developers I've spoken to, I think there is a desire to hit something below 400. The reality of the cost of building is just not there. Right now, with the price of land and the price of materials has really forced that market, I think, further up than a lot of single-family developers would like to be, but they're kind of forced into being that. And so when you take a look at what's been happening with these developments, where are you cutting some of the costs? And a lot of that has come down to lot sizes. What we used to see for a typical lot size 10, 15 years ago for a single-family home is substantially smaller today because the customer and user would rather trade a smaller lot for higher amenities in the home.
Interesting. Right, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Yes, Bruce.
So Eric, on this housing price of 1,782, does that include taxes and insurance at all, or is that, because that's a big part when you're looking at a $396,000 home, it can kind of push them out
Yeah.
of that market.
President Piney, Commissioner Goblish, that's why we have a banker on HEDRA. You find those details. I'm glad you brought that up because it would assume that number would include taxes and everything else that would go into that, same with the insurance.
All right, any additional questions? All right, thank you. That's a great deal of information. Please extend our thanks to Grady too. All right, we are now on to item B, the 2022 HEDRA budget.
Thank you, Mr. President. Within your packet, I provided an analysis and summary of the budget request that we have submitted to the City Council related to our budget for 2022. What's been very helpful in developing this has been your assistance in the strategic plan, and I wanted to ensure that the strategic plan priorities that we all established as a group are reflected in what we're doing over 2022 and beyond. And so some of the items that we have on there, I'll go through. Redevelopment capital is an interesting one here. Over the last 10 years or so with the Hudson redevelopment project, our ability to do more has been hampered because of what we need to have on hand to pay for the cost related to that development and the income that has not been derived from that project. As we look into the future with that minimum assessment agreement that was executed, we have income that will be coming in to help pay off that debt, which is great. And when we look at our fund balance, which is essentially our unspent funds within HEDRA that we could allocate to various projects, we've been very cautious in wanting to allocate much of that because of the uncertainties of that building. Right now, we've got about 1.2 million in that fund. What I'm proposing here is that we allocate a portion of that, about $500,000, which is 560 altogether, 60,000 existing this year, which is budgeted towards Vermillion Street, and another 500,000 out of that budget to go for redevelopment capital. This is a pretty onerous area as far as what it would be used for. We have identified properties within our strategic plan, mostly along Vermillion Street, for redevelopment. This would provide a mechanism for a couple of different items. One, an outright purchase of property that we could hold for development. Two, to be able to assist in providing some gap financing or to assist in purchasing properties from a private entity that may be looking at development. This provides us the capital to make projects happen on this. Now, looking at our role in that, I always like to be in a position in which I am assisting a private developer. I don't want to be in a position of competition with them. The reality is, in a lot of these places, the private market is not going to move on its own because of certain obstacles with either assembly, condition of properties, cost for demolition, et cetera. This provides a mechanism for us to be involved in it, which would be very beneficial to meeting some of the goals we established within the Vermillion Corridor Plan and the Downtown Property Use Study. So that's an important aspect to it. Second item I've got on here is UBC lumber development, which we talked about earlier tonight. But $70,000 for the demolition of that building. As we discussed, if that becomes an object that would be done this year, sooner than the '22 budget, we would take that out of the budget reserves, the fund balance that we have. We're also going to be applying for a grant to defer some of that cost as well. And frankly, that building may be more valuable than we thought. It might be a situation too with the price of metal and the desire for people for buildings that it might not be as much of a loss as I originally thought. There may be entities out there that would either take it at a scrap or move it. So that's a possibility that's out there. When we take a look at commercial rehabilitation grants, this year we put $50,000 into the parklets, and wonderful project, great results down there. I want to be able to do something similar next year on that. And with Eric's assistance and really leading the charge here on the downtown existing building assessment study, being able to do that this year, and then the results of that we can use as grant funding to rehab buildings next year. With this existing building study, and I know we'll get into this in a little more detail later, this provides, we will be taking the lead role in assessing downtown conditions of private buildings. And most of the buildings in the downtown, you're looking at were rehabbed 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So it's been 20, 30 years in some of these buildings. It's been a great asset and a great growth impetus for downtown, but there's certain things when you look around that all old buildings need some TLC. So this would go through and provide an analysis of what that would be, and then there'd be a funding source. Now, how that would be used would be determined. We'd be kicking around ideas of whether it would be some sort of matching grants. We have skin in the game, but it would just be a mechanism to do that. The other items we have on there are, we have the cleanup funds for Block 1, which is the property north of Art Space. These are unspent funds from this year, and we'd carry those forward. These would be a part of a matching grant upon development of that property. And then our loan and grant programs are similar in the amount that we've done from year to year, providing for the loan funds for rehabilitation of properties, year one being interest and payment free, and then 9 years after that at a quarter above prime. those would continue. So those are the major items that we have going forward. Wanted to check in with HEDRA tonight to make sure that we're on a similar path, staff-wise, as the commission is. Where the budget goes from here is our finance committee of the council will be meeting and discussing certain budget priorities that go beyond HEDRA and other budgets and requests within the city, coming back with recommendations and then moving forward from there. So I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions? We have a few items here.
Question here.
Yes.
So we're taking money that we already have and just allocating it out. How do we replenish that each year? I mean, I know we have a tax levy, and how much do we get each year that will help with this?
Sure. Commissioner, the tax levy generally is around $400,000.
Okay.
That's what so the funding that we receive from HEDRA comes from two sources. I guess really three sources. One, the HRA levy that we implement, about $400,000 annually comes in from that. Most of that's been used for debt service related to the Hudson building lately. Second is funds that are allocated from the general fund through the city council towards economic development. And the third would be the fund balance funds that we have.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Eric.
If I could just add maybe a fourth funding source, when we sell land. That's another piece, when we seek, like the redevelopment capital, for instance, while that is an upfront cost, the intent is that we recoup those costs either through the land sale transaction or through increasing our tax base. And so while, yes, there is money spent, the expectation really is that that is money that's brought back in again, either when it's sold or through tax base.
Yes, Commissioner Vaughn.
Thank you. Chair, Eric, can you say that when we say increased tax base, the tax base goes back into the city council fund? That example being, if we sell a place, it gets developed, and no, not even TIF, it doesn't come back to HEDRA though, does it? It goes back to the city council, the city tax base, correct?
Commissioner, yes, that's correct, yeah.
But I think what Eric might be pointing out here too is that if we get a market purchase price for just the sale of that property, that comes back to us.
Correct.
So that's an important aspect.
And I guess, and maybe it's a policy question, I don't, even a city council question, could it, I think we did, could we TIF it back to ourselves, so we could have another funding source if the tax rates go up on a building? That's kind of how Hudson was done, it came back to us. Just wondering if we should look at that as any HEDRA property, if it's TIF'd, it comes back to us as HEDRA to reinvest, to keep that funding mechanism going, to buy another property, to keep using TIF more or less in our advantage. Risk-taking, I mean, we did it with Hudson, that doesn't always pay off right away, but sooner or later it does, so.
Yeah, Commissioner, there might be a possibility. I mean, when you look at the establishment of TIF districts and you include properties that are beyond the building in question, there's some ability to pool some of those fundings, so you might be able to do that.
Where would that conversation begin? I mean, just out of curiosity, would that be a council or a HEDRA issue?
You know, I think this would be a good body to start that conversation in. The council has reserved the ability on any land transactions, and I think on any real larger policy decisions to weigh in on that. So we want to be able to make sure we're in the same direction, but I think this would be a good place to start.
Okay, maybe that's something with our extra time in the next month we can begin to charter into. Thank you, Mark.
Will do. Thank you.
Yes, Eric.
Thank you, President Piney. One other item I wanted to point out to HEDRA, whether it's the UBC redevelopment or the downtown environmental cleanup, one thing we heard from Stencil Group was the ability for staff to have things like geotechnical reports, phase one environmental, some of the due diligence work completed on the front end of projects makes it very, or not easier, but it helps the process when trying to recruit and attract developers because we have information to give to them, more than just, hey, here's it on a map. They can really do more of their vetting more quickly and decide whether or not this is a real project. Stencil Group, for instance, I mean, this is maybe 2-3 months. I mean, the amount of information that the city had on UBC was very, very helpful in getting them to where they were this evening. And so the ability in this budget to continue to do that on HEDRA-owned land is very helpful.
Thank you, that's a good point. Yes, Mark?
I just want to comment on that because I agree. That's the reason why I asked the question tonight. As developers, and I brought this up at the city council, jobs are next. What makes them choose Hastings? Is there a workforce inside this housing demographic that says, hey, we should go there because there's a chance for, what is that business that wants to come here because someone might create a housing development to actually get the people, or there's people in our houses that want to go to work for those people. I don't think we have that data of where people work and what kind of jobs they're looking for. And I don't know who does that study. That's probably with the chamber a little bit. But I think that's another discussion item is the next phase of, we did a lot of work on housing, and I think it's proven that we're starting to get inventory and a good variety of it. The next one is, how do we get people to stay here? Because I think the businesses want people to work here, live here, not commute out of here. So I think that's kind of all the process that I'm trying to get toward in my role. But I'm just curious, that's good information for a developer to say why he chooses this. Now, how do we get that next step to go with that? And who does it? Is it this body or is it someone else?
Commissioner, from a data standpoint, we could do some analysis to see what is out there. There's got to be existing sources to find out a lot of those questions. It's a matter of where we go from it now. The interesting thing that, we're a part of a larger region here, and job growth in neighboring cities and employment opportunities in other cities can lead to large impacts here. Because I think when you take a look at the region and you take a look at the differences between cities from a choice standpoint, we have a very unique aspect. We are a standalone town with a strong identity, and that is a focus for a lot of other people. The other thing we point out is from an affordability standpoint, we've got some more affordable housing here than others. So when you take a look at something like is being bantered around just north of our border in Cottage Grove, where you have a facility that could be employing 1,200 people, whatever that number is, that has a huge impact on us.
So Eric, this is a big development group. They come in and do their homework. If I want to go buy a Dairy Queen, I'm doing my homework. So are they willing to share much of that with you on what their analysis is? One of the things he mentioned was that it's an apartment building with amenities. Well, I'm not aware that we have an apartment building with amenities in the city of Hastings. We have apartment buildings, but not like that. Are they at all willing to share what they've done?
Commissioner, I would say that anecdotally, a lot that was shared this evening is typically what they share with staff. When they come forward with a financial request, we'll get more on the behind-the-scenes numbers of, hey, what works from a rent standpoint. But I think to your point there, they looked at a very full downtown, very low vacancy, both from a residential and a commercial standpoint, and saw an opportunity. And we're in a very good development market, as was stated, and they want to, that's why it's going as fast as it is because they see an opportunity and they don't want to miss it. I know it's kind of a roundabout answer to your question. They don't necessarily get into the.
Interesting to see what you get with what their analysis was.
I do know that they looked into, like Vermilion Shores 2, they looked into, what's the vacancy like there and some of the recently built multifamily housing and saw that saw strong demand and filled up, and so they expect the same with their project. And as they said with their Northfield project, they were they were full at opening with a wait list of 18 people wanting places to live. And so I think they expect much the same here.
All right, thank you, Eric. I have always felt that residential investment or attention, at least, is as important as commercial. And I think that we're beginning to see the interest in that come this way. And I think that it really started with HEDRA and the Confluence Project. I think that that's kind of the beacon that we're waiting for, but I think that we're going to see that stimulating residential development and different types of it, and what it's going to mean directly to the downtown is going to be just incredible. I'm very, very proud to have been part of that with HEDRA, and it's just been an amazing process. And people are looking, people are taking notice, we have something here. And I think that what that's gonna mean to economic development is gonna be very apparent. And I think that the questions regarding of how does that, affect or be affected by different housing stocks and the larger community will come next. But I think that downtown has been a really good place to start, and I definitely think we're on the right track. So, thank you. All right, do we have any additional questions or comments on this? Let's see. All right, are we on the downtown architectural assessment then? Item C, very good. Oh, yes, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. This evening, staff is seeking support from HEDRA for staff to essentially then ask City Council as well, authorization to submit a grant through the Dakota County CDA, a redevelopment incentive grant, this one for planning purposes. The planning project that staff is proposing is a downtown architectural assessment, as was discussed briefly during the budget discussion. Staff is aware of a handful of kind of ongoing maintenance items with some downtown properties that likely require attention. Staff, we don't have an on-staff architect or structural engineers, things like that. So what we've been proposing is and been talking with some consultants about what it would cost to have a study completed of the downtown that essentially would go through, staff would coordinate with the building owners and essentially set up time for that exterior review of the property to identify things like brickwork or just life safety issues essentially, and that his really preservation of our historic downtown. And the goal really would be, out of that study, we would get essentially a list of, hey, on this building, X, Y, and Z, on this one, A, B, and C, here's roughly what that would cost, and really how high of a priority it should be for it to be attended to. What we've witnessed in the downtown is, while the building owners will take care of the property, they don't always necessarily know the root cause of some of the issues. And sometimes it's, well, the paint is peeling, let's just paint the paint over, but what was causing behind that paint for it to peel maybe? And so we want to get down to those answers. In discussions with the consultants we've spoken to at this point, we don't anticipate this costing any more than $30,000 at this point. The grant through the CDA will provide up to $15,000 at a 1-to-1 match. So staff is proposing to use $15,000 or up to $15,000 out of the HEDRA budget. Staff would propose utilizing remaining funds from the outdoor dining grant that is set to expire at the end of this month. We utilized approximately $21,000 from the $40,000 that was earmarked, leaving 19. We propose to use 15 of that 19 to help pay for the city match towards the study and the county grant. So that'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Eric, is there going to be a limit on the age of the building that's going to be eligible? I just want to make sure that it's not all downtown focused all the time, as there's other buildings in the community that may say, yeah, I wish we could get somebody to give us some input also. So I just want to find out what that threshold is.
Yeah. Commissioner, the geographic boundary would be those within the historic district of downtown, as well as the Armory, which is designated just on its own. It's not part of the downtown district, but it is historically designated.
The old Armory.
Correct, yep, the
Okay.
old Armory.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I mean, kind of what I'm seeing is that this would be an opportunity for someone to come in and maybe take a look at some of the buildings downtown. And it may even be a case where the owners themselves aren't aware of the deterioration and, the permanent damage that's being done. This would be an opportunity for us to make them aware of that, and then in the future, be ready or have the opportunity to help them then. I mean, our downtown is a treasure, and unfortunately, sometimes individual building owners don't always appreciate that. I think this is an opportunity for this community that has such an amazing architectural history to be able to preserve that, to be able to just make sure that it's at least gonna make it onto the next generation. So I think that this study is a really important, effective, and official way to begin that journey, so thank you. All right, it looks like we would need a motion on this potentially, or an action? Yes, Eric.
Sorry, Mr. President, if I could, I did want to give, I misspoke earlier. Our city planner, Justin Fortney, is a really good resource when it comes to historic preservation, and so he's been on kind of the walk-arounds with the consultants and kind of pointing out things that he's already aware of. And so I just wanted to clarify that when I said staff didn't have the knowledge of the resources. We do have a great asset in Justin to point some of these out, but he's obviously got his hands full with this building right now.
Yes.
I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you. All right, any additional questions or comments on this? All right, it looks like we are looking for an action then? Would we-
President Bonney, no action necessary on this.
Okay.
These would be using existing funds. We just wanted to bring this to your attention.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we are on to item D, very exciting, the Makers Alleyway Market.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another item on the HEDRA strategic plan was to find ways to utilize the alleyway between Second Street and Levy Park and find ways to activate that and utilize it as it was part of the Riverfront Renaissance project. It has a lot of nice planting, it's all nice concrete, it's stamped, looks really great, and as such, it should be used for more than just trash removal, is the hope. And so staff collaborated on this and came up with the idea of doing a Makers Alleyway Market, essentially a pop-up market that would occur. We've identified 3 Thursdays coming up, August 19th, 26th, and September 2nd. That will coincide with music in the park that will take place in Levy Park that evening. It also coincides with when the mural will begin work on the back of Hastings Family Service. And so it should provide a very nice series of events occurring within the downtown during that time. Staff is just proposing those 3 evenings at this time for that. It would just close down the alleyway, wouldn't have any effect on the public roadways themselves. Staff's plan is after those 3 to kind of take a step back, see what worked, what didn't, if it's something to pursue further. If all goes well, then perhaps it's something that we would look to do with all the music in the park nights next year perhaps, but we'll see how the first 3 go first.
Very nice, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, and I'll add to that, one of the strategic partners in this is Art Space, and so to work with some of our local artists as well and get them involved.
So we'll get to see some of their work out there then.
That's the
Very
hope.
good.
So Eric, are the vendors first come? Are they being juried, or how you decide? Are we begging people, or are we on the?
Commissioner, because we're doing this as a pilot project, the goal was to spend as little or no money on it as possible, right? So what we're proposing to provide is a 10 by 10 space and our downtown, right? And they bring the tents, the chairs, whatever else they need to sell their goods. Based on the 1 block we've identified for that will occur, we anticipate there's room for about 30 vendors with a 10 by 10 space. If we have more than that, that's a great problem we'd like to solve. If we get there is room, there is some city-owned land, adjacent to Art Space that we could try and tie in if we needed to. It's in that grassy area. So if that problem arises, we'll definitely go for it. The initial is take the applications as they come in. They are required to get a transient merchant's license through the city. It does carry with it a $30 fee for a 1 day, $90 for a month, and then like $200 and some for a full annual. So there is kind of that piece, making sure that people that do sign up have skin in the game and do show up that evening, so we don't limit the number of people and then not have people show up.
All right, thank you. Mark, do you have a question?
I think Eric just said, it was gonna be about insurance. I was just trying to make it as easy as possible. If we approve this, can we just get through so we don't have to have these pop-up vendors go through a bunch of paperwork? I was just trying to make it a blanket saying, it's a good idea. If they sign up, they're covered. So it sounds like they're doing it through the transit thing, so. Do you need a motion on that, or?
I Very good, thank you, Eric. Yeah, this is very exciting. I mean, downtown, there's literally something for everyone on almost any given night now. It's just amazing, so thank you. This will be good. All right, now we move on to item E, the development update.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'll briefly run through some of the development highlights that have been happening. We listed a bunch of them within the report itself. I want to highlight one event that we've been working on for a long time, and that is the Confluence Building and the lighting of the cupolas that took place earlier this month. And hopefully you had the opportunity, if you were not there, to see them lit up during Rivertown Days. It's quite striking. And it goes back in my mind to the original reason why we purchased that thing. And that was, we wanted to be able to provide a reason for people to come across the bridge and come into our downtown. And when you see those things lit up there, and wow, what is that? I have to check that out. Another reason to do that. So just added excitement for that project to move forward and to come to fruition. So that's great. Other things on the report here, we've had good conversations with CBRE and Target. We're hoping that something more substantive is released in the near future, so we can have something happening there. But things are moving in the right direction, which are great. On Heritage Ridge, third edition was submitted today, so now we've got another 40 lots that are coming through as part of the 116 total. So they want to get approval on that and begin construction there. Property sold on Quality One, so they're under construction as well. Quality One's under construction. Schoolhouse Square will be under construction shortly. They're closing within the next month. In Villas, we got the first building permit in, so good stuff that's going on there. We also got the application today in from Luke Seward pertaining to his project, waiting plans to come in and scheduling for that. So things are moving along. The initial discussions that we have as a group here with people, developers that are kicking the tires at different projects continue from a residential standpoint mostly. And, you know, there's a lot of potential out there for single family and apartment projects that we hope will turn into applications here in the near future. So that's good news.
Very good, thank you. Any questions on all of this information? All right, that brings us up to item 6 then, and we will proceed with a closed door session then?
Yes, Mr. President, what we'll need for this is for one of the HEDRA members to motion and then another to second to close the public meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 13D05, Subdivision 3C, to determine the offer for purchase price of properties located on Block 28. This provision provides us the opportunity to talk about potential strategies and potential acquisition price of property so that we can do that in a private setting. And so that would be the motion and the request on the floor if that was to take place in the past. What I would suggest is that we would adjourn this meeting here, go into private session in the volunteer room, and then adjourn the private session and come back here and close the meeting.
All right, thank you, John. So we are entertaining a motion then at this point?
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of closing the meeting at this point, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And the motion passes. Thank you.